Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber. And welcome to the Scoreboard. I am Jared Kimber, and we're going to have to talk about how KKR managed to win the IPL. Because they did it really, really easily when it comes down to it. But let's just go back and have a look at all this. Their bowlers got good because the first half of this tournament, they did not look like a team that could put any pressure on with the ball. And the last half of this tournament, almost everything they did right. In fact, if you think about it just from a very basic perspective, they had new ball bowling, they had seamers who worked in the middle, and they had spinners that worked all the way through the first 16 overs. Maybe death would have been a problem. It never mattered, but none of their games really got down to the death. And that's because they won 6 games on a trot. And if I'm not mistaken, and I didn't get to look this up, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, they took 57 of the last 60 wickets available to them, which I believe in the IPL is the most ever for any team going on a run at all. So absolutely crazy the amount of wickets that they managed to take. And a lot of that was to do with Mitchell Starc and Varun Chakravarti just getting better, right? They sucked ass at the start of this tournament, and they were absolutely fantastic by the end of it, right? Both of them did exactly what they needed to do. That meant that Varun and Narine worked as a partnership. And I always thought that was the big issue looking at that early part. I actually didn't mind all that much that Starc was struggling and, that they didn't have as many other death bowling options or anything else, because I kind of figured they could get so much out of having Chakravarti and Narine together. That eventually played a huge part in this season. But Russell kept taking wickets. He took a lot of wickets for a man with no cartilage left in either of his knees, right? He went completely above and beyond the amount of overs he bowled and everything else to really play an important part in this season. But I think more important than Russell is the fact that India had 2, I want to say second-tier Indian seamers. It's probably, B tier? So S tier, A tier, and then B tier seamers in Harshit and Aurora, right? They completely stood up. They are both kind of limited in some ways in what they can do, but because they both did their jobs so well, they kind of allowed for each other. That was incredibly important. And, they had a good backup spinner, Indian spinner as well, which they didn't even need to really worry about. Having said all that about KKR, when you look at this particular game, a big part of the reason that KKR won is because of the Sunrisers regression. I had said, whenever it was a couple of weeks back, that was the issue that I had. When you have everyone in form, there's just very likely that too many people are going to lose it towards the end of the season. And in a very short season, that usually isn't a problem. This is a longer season. And eventually, of course, Travis Head was due a lot of failures. A lot of people will talk about him being choking or whatever it may be. But if you look at it, his form started to dip off already. And even when he made runs, he was struggling. He clearly wasn't seeing the ball as well at the start of at the end of the season as he was at the start. That's a very normal thing to have happen. The problem is that everyone was in their very top S-tier level of their form. Even regressing to normal form for them was going to be a dip. And it probably went below that as well. And then in the final, KKR definitely got the better of the conditions. I don't know how much the pitch changed. And let's be honest, KKR probably also wanted to bat first and certainly lost the toss. But when it came down to it, this was certainly a wicket that you preferred to bat second on than bat first on. Yes, it's easier to bat when you're in a situation where there isn't as much pressure on you and you're not chasing a big total and everything else. But the ball was coming up better. Venky's innings, I don't even know how you would have hit that many balls the way that Venky did in that first one. But then let's go through all the different things that when it comes to KKR's batting. So we talked a lot about their bowling. What about their batting? Ramandeep and Dre Russ barely had an impact this year. And the fact that they could bat Raman Deep at number 9 and not worry about it at all the way through the season just tells you how ridiculous their depth was. But how about this? Rinku Singh basically had a season off. They've won this title without him, and last year it felt like it was Rinku or bust way too many times. The other thing about their batting order that I really like is the fluidity of it. They sometimes still get Shreyas Iyer's position wrong. But that's pretty common for captains, unfortunately, when they're making decisions about themselves. Everything else, they kind of generally get right. When they need to send in a hitter, they send in a hitter. When they need to send in someone who's a bit more capable and can bat for a little bit longer, they will do that. When they want to attack a particular kind of spin, they do that right. They get their timings right a lot better than many other sides. Now, part of that is they have so many options that they can do that. And I do think that plays a huge part in it. The other thing I really enjoy about their batting lineup is that on paper they have 2 anchors. They have Shreyas Iyer and they have Venki. But Venki is what would I call Venki? We need a new name for someone like him. He's almost like... He's like an anchor who can hit. And by that I mean, there are certain days when if you need him to go out and get 20 off 20, he's more than capable of doing that innings. And if you need him to go out and hit 20 off 6, he will also give that a go. He will play the exact role he needs to every time. And then you have someone like Shreyas Iyer, who I think early in the season got maybe a little bit too obsessed with being the anchor. And by the end of the season realized, and was in better form, that he could play both roles. Again, that means they have that ability. And neither of those guys needs to bat for them. What an incredible position to be in. And so many other sides aren't like that. Then, let's talk about the opening partnership. We've talked a little bit about the luck of Delhi, right? Of suddenly ending up with Fraser McGurk. Let's talk about the luck of KKR. And I think there are 2 major bits of luck that I think changed a lot. But one is certainly that Salt and Narine were not supposed to be a successful opening partnership this year. And I say that based on the fact that Phil Salt was not supposed to be in this side. He was not drafted. He was available for anyone to pick. And Sunil Narine had averaged something like 4 in the tournament before this when he had been trying to open the batting. Like, even if you thought that they came up with a good combination, no one expected this. And then the last thing I'll talk about from their cricket perspective is essentially Sunil Narine may have just had the best year we have ever seen anyone have in the IPL. We had him in our top 3 defensive bowlers, I think, in our awards. We had him in a bunch of different batting awards for what he managed to do there. I think you can easily make the claim he was in the top 3 overall bowlers this year when it comes to his economy, which was like 6.69. That's just raw stats, 6.69. And the fact he took more than a wicket a game. That is absolutely incredible. And he could bowl from pretty much from the 4th over through to the 18th. So the flexibility he gives you with bowling is incredible. And he's taking wickets and no one can hit him. And then his batting absolutely was crazy. By the end of the season, it had regressed, which it had to have, because he had more luck than anyone I've ever seen. But even in the final, that 6 off 2, it's not that it was the winning 6, because obviously they were massive in front. But again, it took a lot more pressure off them. He didn't chew up any balls. He just kept doing his job. And you could easily make a claim for him being in the top 10 most impactful batters this tournament. So to be in the top 3 of bowlers and the top 10 of batters. Maybe we've seen that before, but I don't know. And then the last thing I want to talk about is rest. Generally, rest can go either way in playoffs, right? Sometimes you can get out of rhythm. All your players are in form, everything's going well, and then you suddenly have a week off when you never usually have a week off. They had like 2 weeks off at the end of this tournament. They had a week off, then a game, then another week off. That is not a normal thing to do. But specifically in this case, I thought it was brilliant for them because what it allowed for was for them to play a Sunrisers team who had gone through one of the hardest games of T20 I've ever seen physically on a set of players 2 days before. So they weren't just rested for this game. They had been rested over the last couple of weeks. And, in the end, it wasn't a grueling game and maybe didn't have a big part to play in it. But it certainly helped them be very, very sharp all the way through. Brilliant effort. If you'd have told me after, 2 or 3 games that they had a chance of winning this, I would have said, well, Varun Chakravarti and Mitchell Stark must have got a lot better. They did. But I wouldn't have factored in Sunil Narine. And Phil Salt disappearing in the end didn't play a part at all. Brilliant effort from them to win this as easily as they did. And sad for the Sunrisers, and specifically for Pat Cummins, who had the chance of being the first man in history to hold the quadruple crown of World Test Championship, World Cup, T20 World Cup, and IPL. I don't know if anyone else will ever get close again, and it's actually quite sad that that hasn't happened. But anyway, on with the scoreboard part of the show. Let's start with KKR's runs per over by face. This is kind of funny graphic, isn't it? I wasn't sure how they would go about that chase. I thought, obviously, Narine would be Narine. Gabaz didn't bat. Oh, I missed it. I thought Gabaz was batting pretty ordinary, so I thought at any stage he might look to go for singles. But Venki coming in could have easily gone away from me, which is, as I was saying before, one of the strengths of Venki. Instead, what did they actually manage to do? They went all in on intent, and good on them. Even Shreyas Iyer did that. Incredible that they slowed down to 9.33 runs and over there as well. Gabaz had a strike rate of 121, and Venki went at 2 runs a ball. Phenomenal striking from him on a wicket, even if it got easier, and I think it did a little bit, although Gabaz's innings and Narine's innings suggest it wasn't that much easier. They really struggled there. And well done to Markram for a cheeky one here. But realistically, I think all 3 of these guys bowled balls that they probably shouldn't have bowled. I know they had specific plans and everything else. I just think your best bet on this wicket, and looking at some of the Kolkata bowling, was bowl at the top of off, swing the ball away, swing the ball back in, wobble it around if you're Pat Cummins or Natarajan, whatever you want to do, but just bowl really good lengths. And think back to, I think Venki got 2 balls down the leg side. That ball that Sunil Narine got hits for 6 off Pat Cummins. And these are 3 of the first, 4 or 5 boundaries in the game, in that innings. They were from balls that just weren't in the right area. And you don't ever want to blame the Sunrisers bowlers here, because they were, it is not their strength as a team, and they weren't working with all that much. But this was a little bit disappointing, and interesting that they didn't give Unadkat an over early on, considering it was swinging around. But let's get on to the actual innings. Although you make an argument neither was an actual innings here. Just they lost those wickets early on, and they could never get through. I think it's really, really telling that Heinrich Klaasen and Markram both went out to balls that probably on a normal day they just hit for 4 or 6. That wicket was tricky, and Kolkata bowled perfectly to them. And the fact that they managed to score at their highest rate all the way through at the end is a testament to Pat Cummins' innings. I'm trying to think of anything else. Is that it? Is it just a testament to Pat Cummins' innings? Yeah, it was bad. It was really, really bad all the way to the end. Unadkat. Let's throw Unadkat in there as well. Sunrisers batter's strike rate today. Head was obviously dismissed for a duck. You see Nitesh. Well, actually, let's go through them all. Obviously, Abhishek, again, like Head, just had a normal regression towards the end of the year. Tripathi had been in fantastic form for a couple of games and didn't really get anywhere. Markram, they brought him in for 2 finals as the sensible person. It just didn't work for them. Nitesh didn't hang around long enough to make a real issue. Klaasen got himself set and wasn't able to play the innings that he played against Rajasthan. Every time, even when he was trying to hit 4s, it just looked like the wicket wasn't playing apart for him. Shabazz went out playing top edge, but they were so far behind once these guys came in because of that early start. And then Cummins did okay at the end, as we said before, and Unadkat didn't go out for a while anyway. This is Head's innings by match in this tournament. Duck, terrible 34, and duck. Have a look at, he's got 1 single figure score all the way through. I have talked about this so many times on this channel. That's what happens in T20 cricket. People usually string things together and eventually it comes the other way. So you either have a normal pattern, which is score, fail, or score, fail, that sort of pattern. Or if you do get on a run, you are due a regression. The most famous one was the KRL, where he didn't score under 10 for 28 straight innings or something. And then he scored about 4 scores under 10 in the next 5 innings. That's very, very normal. And Head had a great season, and he couldn't finish it off. I'm sure it'll be called a choker anyway, though, because that's how people do things. But despite the fact he was pretty good in some other World Cup games. KKR's bowlers today, Sunil Narine going at 4 runs and over, just locking people off. Chakravarti used really well, but I loved Harshit coming on to get wickets. Aurora went for runs, but caused some issues with his swing. Mitchell Starc finding form there again, and Andre Russell chipping in and taking, 3 for? This is the Starc and Vaibhav's, I can't even get it, Vaibhav's degree of swing in the power play. This isn't crazy swing, but it's really consistently over 2 degrees. Like, have a look at how many balls. So maybe Starc went for either slower balls or cross seam or something here, but almost everything else is swinging. And Aurora couldn't even control it, right? And then you could see it just starts to drop off here. And by that stage, it was kind of too late because they'd lost the 3rd wicket, right? This is a really, really important wicket considering what was about to happen. But even if that wicket doesn't happen here, the advantage is they've already got the 2 wickets, and Chakravarti and Narine would have come on to bowl. This is Starc's pitch map today. These balls angled in and then swung away violently. But you can see here, 3 of those are on a pretty good length. There's obviously one that's a bit short and one that was slightly overpitched. And let's have a look at him over here. Didn't have to worry about death bowling all that much. Again, pretty good lengths. And I would say he'd be pretty happy with this. I think looking back on this season, Starc hasn't always been this accurate. And Aurora's problem today was the ball was swinging too much for him. So we don't have wides on here, but a lot of these balls that were on a good length were swinging away. You can see he struggles a little bit more with exactly where he wants to bowl it at times. And these were when he was going for outswingers. So realistically, your outswingers, you probably want to get in a little bit more, and your in-swingers, you want to get out a little bit more. But he had a fantastic tournament and was part of the reason that they were on top. So you take that. And this is Harshit's average by economy rate by bowling speeds this year. This is fantastic work by Varun here. You can see when he's bowling his slower balls, he's got 11 wickets with an average of 10.82, an economy of 7.5. When he has gone up fast, he's also been very, very good. If he was a baseball pitcher, or even if you're an analyst working with this, you might say to him, I know it's hard to bowl over 140 Ks, but if you can bowl over 140 Ks, and then you can bowl slower balls, that's your best bet. You can see here, this is probably, this is only 5 balls, so we can have a look at that. But when he does slow down a little bit, he got a little bit more tap and went at 10 runs and over. But if he can stay fit and strong, his slower ball works and his fastest ball works. That's a hell of a thing to work from, right? And the 2 of those will work together. And this is Russell's average by economy rate by lengths this season. So you can see here that he had an average of 48 when bowling a good length, right? When he went full, he has an average of 1.6. Of course, he didn't get any wickets here there. But it was really this back of a length where he did brilliantly, averaging 14.5. He's going for runs. He knows he's going to, right? And he can back that up with the short ball as well, that's a lot of bounces. What's that, 51? He's bowled almost as many short balls as he has back of a length. That is not normal at all. Usually it would be more like 4-1. An awful lot of bounces. So that back of a length ball did really well. And remember, in previous years, he's had a lot of success with Yorker. And generally, even on a normal year, you would have more success bowling length balls. But he just didn't manage to do that much, although he didn't get hit for those. So he'll take that. Anyway, that's the end of the scoreboard part of the show. Let us get to the questions from you, the audience. We'll take a quick break here. And I can see there's a couple of super chats already. But we'll get to a quick break, and then we'll be back in a moment for more on the scoreboard. This is brought to you by Cricket 8. They are a new player in the game trying to educate fans on what is really happening in cricket. We have a partnership with them where we host live watch-alongs, do podcasts, and write articles. If you want to know what is really happening with our game, visit cricket8.com. If you make any content, Minvo Pro is the tool for you. Take your long format content and cut it and slice it for social media. This AI-inspired weapon will turn your one piece of work into so many clips. Try Minvo.pro now. A few good questions here. Let's see if I can get to a couple of others before the end. But thank you to everyone who sent a question in this year, let alone today. It's a final, but this one kind of died on us a little bit, didn't it? But big thanks to everyone who came from Cricket 8 as well. Aditya says, the team with the most Tamilians? I've never heard Tamilians as a phrase before. The one that always confuses everyone in cricket is Bajans, because if you know the West Indies, Bajans make sense. But if you say Bajans to someone who doesn't know Barbados, they look at you really confusing. But the team with the most Tamilians in the playing 11 won the IPL when the final was played in Chennai. First time that the most expensive player has won the title. That one I can't tell you. But it's not, because Dhoni's probably the most highly paid player. So it might be the first time that the most highly paid player at an auction has won the title, but certainly not overall. I don't think the conditions had much to do with it today, so I don't think having extra Tamil players had an impact on that game from what I saw Aditya, but great question. Ashwin says, big fan of Abdul Samad. He's such a clean and gifted striker of the ball. Is his bad run a confidence issue or a technique issue? Do you think playing him higher up in the order would help? You do see sometimes during seasons players on really successful teams who bat down the order struggling with just to face enough balls. So I just want to see what he faced this year. So we ended up with 108 balls, right? So he struck at a strike rate of 168. He did his job, but he never went beyond 37 because that wasn't his role there. Look, I think he's fine. Who is he a better batter than that goes in ahead of him, right? Having him and Shabazz at the end is perfect, right? And there are some days you will send them up the order to be able to do other things. But there was no need in this particular... I mean, Pat Cummins is another player that at times you could have... They had a very good, strong, long batting lineup, and a lot of it was in form, and so he only ends up facing 108 balls. I will say this, he only faced 128 balls last year, where his top score was also 37. He's very well suited to that. I don't know what his age is. When was he born? 2001? Yeah, he's 23. Let's see what he develops into. But there's no hurry. He's certainly going to get a contract, and we'll be back next year. Thank you for the super chat, Ashwin. QTW says, thoughts on finalists getting to host all the playoffs next season? I don't understand how it helps anyone. It helps the broadcasters. It helps the organisers. Yeah, in a proper sport, you shouldn't do this. I don't really understand why we're in a situation like this. But hopefully, eventually, we'll move beyond that, but we're not quite there yet. Cummins says, QT says, Cummins won the IPL in 2014. Yeah, I'm talking about as a captain. Because Cummins has won all three as a captain. I'm assuming other players might have won them as well. But I'm talking about purely as a captain. No one has ever won the IPL, the World Test Championship, 50 over World Cup, T20 World Cup as a captain. And if it happened once, that might be the only time it ever happens, right? Maybe an Indian player in the future. But it's a hell of a quad. And also, would it be the most recent of all of them? No, it won't be for the T20. So he wasn't quite holding them all at one time, but it would have been absolutely ridiculous. Miko, for God's sake. Miko says, I don't understand why people talk about players winning titles. I mean, Ambati Rayudu won 5 IPL titles. Doesn't mean he's better than ABD. And Cummins might win the quadruple. Doesn't mean he's Bumrah. No, but if you're a captain and you win all those titles, you play a big part in that, right? It's not an accident that the teams that Cummins are in are winning. He's very thorough. I don't think he's maybe the most brilliant tactician at all times, but when he makes a really smart tactical choice, even if he does it rarer than maybe some other more avant-garde captains or free-flowing jazz captains, he's absolutely brilliant at that. It's not an accident. This is not the strongest era of Australian cricket, and yet Pat Cummins has won all those. The Sunrisers are a very flawed team, and yet again, he's worked out how to put his players in an environment to do that. Miko, it would be silly to say that Pat Cummins has not had to have a big role in all of this, being that he has been the captain of all that. That doesn't make him better than Bumrah, and no one said it did. Bumrah's got a lot of trophies too, by the way. Bumrah's a pretty handy player. But if you go back to the Rayudu is the sort of player that you need to win titles. All right, Rayudu is your Robert Horry type player if you're an NBA fan, right? He's the sort of player that helps you glue things together in a good way. Generally, players who win a lot of titles play a brand of cricket or a role that helps you win things. Sometimes you can just get lucky, right? Was it the Tim Bresnan record when, and Tim Bresnan was a really handy cricketer for England when he came into Test cricket. But a lot of it that was England were on a roll at that stage, and Bresnan played incredible cricket when he started, so he helped that. No one is now saying that Tim Bresnan's a great cricketer. But if he'd done that over a 10-year career, you have to start going, well, there must be a reason this person keeps turning up in winning situations. That can be, I'm trying to think of like a lower-end role player, all the way through to a star. When it's a captain, it's very different. So, yeah, I think it would be silly not to mention that Pat Cummins was on the verge of winning that. I mean, what are we doing here? Hayes says, this clearly means that Sunrisers batters couldn't bat when the pitches became a bit slower. Travis is a flat track bully, a lucky one at that. Every dog has its day. I mean, Travis Head, in the last couple of years, has made runs in all formats on all surfaces. This is just nonsense, right? Also, the slow wicket is interesting because it was the swinging ball that got them, right? So that actually goes more into your idea of that. But when it comes down to it, Hayes, they had scored a lot of runs and they were playing a particular way that was bound to regress. Why would they have stopped that? If they had the Venky innings for them at the start of this game, they could have won this trophy, right? And we're saying that Venky is not a flat track bully. I think Venky's a pretty good player on flat tracks as well. So there's so much problematic with this statement, right? What it is doing is going that Travis Head is suddenly no good. Travis Head has dominated T20 cricket, one-day cricket, Test cricket over the last couple of years. He's an aggressive player. He is going to make mistakes at times. That is the role that he was given. Abhishek got a ball today that most Test left-handed... I can't think of a left-hander in Test cricket at the moment that would have been able to play that ball that that Abhishek got. So are we saying now that he's a flat-track bully? No. Alistair Cook wouldn't have hit that ball, mate. We've got to think about actually what we saw here. It was a tricky wicket, and I think if you look at the first three wickets, let's take them aside. The first wicket after the power play, which was Harshit, was that Nitesh? When I first saw it, I was like, well, look, it's full outside our stump. He's had a go at this, and he's got an edge behind. Unfortunately, they're further behind. Then you go have a look at the ball. It nips away. How many times do you get in the seventh over, you get a length ball and not even like a slot ball, really. You just play that through the line. Generally, that doesn't happen. Look at what happened with Klaasen and with Markram. They both got balls that were in their wheelhouse, that were balls that they would usually dispatch, and they went out to them. This is why this channel is about analysis and not just hot takes. Because a lot of what is said in here doesn't make any sense when you actually go back and look through the cold, hard facts. The truth is, they were due a regression. The truth is that this was an unusually friendly bowling surface, and I think if KKR had batted first, they might have found themselves in a lot of trouble. KKR have been taking wickets on all surfaces, though, against many different teams. I don't know what more needs to be said there. Actually says, cheers on the coverage for the IPL. Thank you, actually, for all your support here and on Cricket Day. Looking forward to your T20 coverage soon, and I don't envy you given how spread out the games are. Yeah, I have to look at the schedule. I don't think I'll be doing a lot of the late night games live, partly because it doesn't suit. I just don't want to. When it's an important game, I will certainly do that. But it's very hard to set up your media plan, let alone your life, when you've got one game at 3 p.m., one game at 6 p.m., and one game at 3 a.m. in my time. So we haven't quite worked out what we'll do. We'll definitely do a scoreboard once a day. Hoping to do a deal with our friends at MV Play. Shout out to them so that I can go back and watch every single ball. So I don't have to watch everything live. And also so I can do what I've always wanted to do, which is watch a game 2 or 3 times and really learn more about it. I think there's a few different things that we'll be doing, but we'll be covering it more or less the same as we've covered the IPL, I would have thought. Maybe we'll have more scoreboards. I'm trying to think. We did one for every day of the last World Cup, so we might do something similar there, but we'll give it a go. But let's see how we go. Anyway, big thanks to everyone. I'll take a quick short break here, and then at the end of that break, I'll see if there's anything left in the chat.
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.
All right. Few more questions. Miko says, I don't think Cummins was captain in 2021. Was it still Finch? You might be right. If that's the case, then we didn't even get it. We weren't even as close as I was hoping. So now I am actually very upset that we never got there. I can't remember back. To be honest, mate, I've been broadcasting pretty much non-stop for 2 months. So I'm sorry if I said something that bothered you. Maybe just get over it. Let's see what else we have in the chat here. Abdullah says Michael Clark versus Pat Cummins as tactician. Very much one is a batting captain and one is a bowling captain. So I think that Michael Clark is a little bit more willing to take risks. I think he's more tactics and vibes based, and I think Cummins is more research, making sure he's got everything in the right area, being safe. But then when he comes up with a tactical thing, whether it be the World Cup final or, going up against Bazball, some of the things we've seen in this tournament, it's not just from a position of weakness. Whether he can pull games around as much with tactical genius by coming up with 3 or 4 good decisions in a row, which sometimes you need to do, I don't know. I think I'd prefer to play under Pat Cummins. I remember during the Ashes, there was a few times when Smith and Marnus were really upset with the field because he kept them out. And England were milking it. But Cummins is like, this is my field. This is what I am doing. So I can understand that if you like that kind of stuff, you might get frustrated, but he's certainly succeeding a lot. AAA says, why don't teams use pinch hitters more in T20? I remember Mumbai tried to use Mitch McClenaghan a few years ago. So I think I've done entire videos on this AAA on the main channel, so feel free to go over and find them. The basic reason that it stopped working is we all remember when pinch hitters work. We have forgotten the many times that someone comes out and is 3 off 9. If pinch hitters, when you're sending out a player with limited skill, and if they weren't with limited skill, they would bat up the order all the time. So David Willey and Sunil Narine are permanent pinch hitters, right? Because they have that little bit more skill. Most of the players that you send up, Mitch McClenaghan, and I've worked with Mitch, and I think Mitch has been sent up as a pinch hitter in games that I have, been the analyst for. When you're sending someone like that up, the biggest fear is not that they go out first ball. The biggest fear is that they get stuck and they end up with 3 off 9, and that happens more often than you would think. And if you're sending in someone who's limited, there is a big chance that that's going to happen. The best innings that a pinch hitter can hit is something like 13 off 3, right? Gives you a little bit of momentum. It does everything you want, and you've upset the opposition a little bit, and you've lost a wicket that you won't normally have. But if they make 4 off 9, and your idea was to actually get the momentum going, and if you go back to the 90s, and I've gone all the way through bunches of pinch hitter roles in the 90s, so many players who did the opposite of pinch hitting, and we have just completely forgotten about it. If they were better at batting, they would bat up the order more often. It's as simple as that when it comes to those sorts of things. Vika says, was that Stark ball unplayable? Brian Lara, Ganguly would have flicked it for 4. So Ganguly, you said Ganguly's a strong offside player, and you said he flicked it for 4. So Vikas, the amount of times that people send me messages like this, the reason that ball doesn't look unplayable to you is because to you, that is a ball that is hitting the top of off stump. You have to understand it from the position of a batter. That ball is angling towards probably middle and leg stump. The minute that starts to happen, you are batting down that line. Then the ball swings late and hits the top of off stump. I have seen Alistair Cook, who was one of the greatest openers in Test cricket history, be bowled out with balls like that before. Because when a left armer is bowling 90 miles an hour and they're angling the ball down the leg side and then it swings and straightens and hits the top of off stump. The balls that hit the top of off stump in general have the lowest average of any ball in cricket. So even if it went dead straight out of his hand and hit the top of off stump, it's a really good ball. But when it's angling down leg, you've got to factor in the angle. It was the same with, who was it that went out? Rohit Sharma went out in the World Cup to a ball like this, and everyone went, oh, if he wasn't trying to flick it on the leg side. Well, why was he trying to flick it on the leg side? Why was Abhishek's foot open? Abhishek, out of the hand, read that it was coming down the leg side. Then it straightened. Most balls that are bowled to a batter that start to go down the leg side don't straighten, because once you get the ball too far to one side or the other, it doesn't swing back. Otherwise, outswing bowlers would pitch every ball on leg stump. But if you watch outswing bowlers, when they usually pitch the ball on leg stump, do you know what happens? It ends up down the leg side. Even pitching on middle stump, that dream ball is almost impossible. You have to understand the angles. If you want to go back, I'm sure there's a video I did on Rohit Sharma ball from the World Cup, which was exactly the same as this. Brian Lara would have maybe hit this and with soft hands would have edged it to slit. Ganguly would have been in trouble because Ganguly's an offside player and he would have seen that coming into his pads and he would have been opened up the same way that Abhishek was. I'm sorry, mate. It's absolute nonsense. We have to start understanding the angles that balls are bowled on. There is a reason why. There are very few unplayable balls. That was, at that pace, from that height of a bowler, with that amount of swing, perfect delivery. Absolutely perfect. At the very best, you were covering middle stump there. So even if you manage to not get bowled off that ball or not get LBW off that ball, chances are you're going to edge it. The majority of runs off that ball, even from players like Lara and Ganguly, would have been edged. I'm sorry, you're misunderstanding the angles. You talk to an international player and they can talk you through that for hours, why that is an unplayable ball. Rudra says, don't remember the last time the white ball was swinging almost till the end of the power play. Is that normal? No. I think one thing I would say is I actually think it stopped swinging in the, because Varun put it up on one of the graphics, Rudra. I can't remember, was it at the end of the fourth over or the end of the fifth over, it stopped swinging, but it kept seaming. That was the interesting thing about this. I can't think of too many games in the IPL this year where the ball was seaming, after the eighth over even? I think it was still nibbling around. Like it was really, really going. That's, you lose the toss and sometimes you win the situation. That's how these things go. Thank you very much for your super chats. Thank you to everyone for all their different chats all the way through this World Cup. It's a World Cup. We haven't even got to the World Cup. All the way through this IPL. I'll be doing less content over the next week. I'm going on holiday, but there'll still be plenty of stuff on this channel. We've got pre-recorded stuff as well as Bayram and Estella doing some podcasts. I might even try and do a cheeky wag and wheel. I might have to cancel wag and wheel though. But yes, we'll see how we go from that point of view. Please keep liking, keep subscribing. We will be here all the time talking about this game of cricket. Go over to the main channel, goodareas.co. If you haven't been to Cricket 8 yet and you're interested in the sort of stuff we do here, me and Rob spend like 8 hours some days arguing the same way that me and Vikas and me and someone else, Hayes and Miko, were doing it on air during games. So there's plenty of stuff there as well to go and have a look at Cricket 8. So cricket8.com, goodareas.co, like, subscribe, tell your orthopedic surgeon about us. And we will certainly be back very, very soon. But thank you for all the support during this here IPL.
If you have always wanted to turn your passion for sports into a career, well, I have the course for you. Fans with Laptops is the multimedia course that I came up with after millions of reads, views, and listens to all my work. It's designed for anyone to use their own fandom to get better at making content on the sport they love. Go to Fans with Laptops today. If me talking live about cricket is not enough, we also have an entire channel dedicated to the best stories in cricket called Good Areas. Find out what matchups really mean, understand the logic behind baseball, and look at the most important selection in the history of cricket of Basil D'Oliveira. Come and visit us a couple of times a week on the Good Areas channel for a new video.